Welcome back to the Mindfully Gay podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Nick.
And I'm Jerry. Today, we're thrilled to bring you a special episode titled After the Retreat.
We're joined by our previous guest, Cole, to discuss the transformative experience of the Mindfully Gay retreat.
We'll be sharing our personal revelations, the profound moments we witnessed, and how the retreat helped Cole on his healing journey.
Plus, we'll tackle some important topics, including the nature of showing up as you are and the agreements that make our retreats a safe and welcoming space.
So sit back, relax, and let's dive into After the Retreat.
All right, welcome to another podcast with Mindfully Gay.
All right.
And I'm kind of excited about today, and we've brought Cole back.
Good morning.
The reason we brought Cole back is last weekend we did our Mindfully Gay retreat. We had 16 participants that came here to the house on Friday for dinner and stayed till Sunday at lunch. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the retreat. I think all of us are a little jazzed about what happened and how great it moved. And so that's going to be our topic today is talk more about the retreat. I think it's inspired us to look at some other creative approaches about what we can do with the retreat. But we thought it'd be interesting because we had Cole on before the retreat and he experienced the retreat. We thought it would be interesting to get your perspective on what happened. So I don't know, how do we ease into this?
Want to kind of go from the start, Friday evening, and how people showed up. And I'll start, but then you can kind of talk about, how it felt for you to arrive that first evening based on what you learned from just us talking about it.
I already dumped all this on Jerry.
I already to share with our audience.
I already brought it all out. So I'm sure it will be less emotional when I recount today. But
I'll pinch you.
You never know. You never know. Well, Friday evening, we started with the barbecue. And people came. It would start at 6, and people were showing up. And I know I was anxious, and Jerry could speak to how he was feeling, but I know Jerry was feeling a little anxious too. But we were feeling a little anxious. I think my anxiety was around, how is this all going to go? Are people going to enjoy this? Are they going to stick around? Just how is this all going to unfold? And as people were showing up, there was this, I guess you could say there was a little bit of awkwardness, kind of that social awkwardness. You show up and you're not sure, hi, how you doing? How's the weather? It's just kind of this very small talk and kind of standing off to the side. And so there was this awkwardness that maybe started the weekend. But that certainly changed over the weekend. But I just wanted to kind of start there, that I think, at least for me, there was this feeling of anxiety. How is this going to go? Are people going to even show up? And as people were approaching or arriving, I think there was that similar kind of anxiety or that social awkwardness. What were you guys kind of sensing?
I thought I was the opposite of that. I was all excited about this. When we got there, a few people showed up to the door carrying like sleeping bags and wearing their sweats and backpacks. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. This is like a fun,
Sleepover.
Yeah. So I was kind of excited about it. And then the only awkwardness was that I didn't know anyone's name. So when you passed out the name tags, I'm like, this is great. It's definitely helpful.
Yeah.
And it was a great mixed bag of people from, I think the youngest was 19 or 20,
yeah.
Then the oldest was in their 60s. And it was nice to see a mix of younger and older. It was good in the interaction, and you could the nervousness of people lent to lighthearted giggling, and it was kind of nice. It was what you would want and expect from a gathering of friends. There was no, I mean, there was a little people. There were a couple of guys that stood in the back and were a little reserved. You could tell that they were nervous, but I think that was diffused when we all sat around downstairs and we discussed, the whole reason for being there and what was not permitted, but what should happen and what shouldn't happen. Like, put your cell phones away, and what the retreat really is about. And I thought that diffused a lot of it, and I think everyone was kind of really getting into it.
Yeah. Well,
Pretty much everyone.
Bruce even commented, we were having dinner Monday, and he's been around this stuff before, and he goes, I wasn't sure if this was going to work, but he said that first night he just felt like people kind of started to go for the dive,
Yeah.
get into the experience.
I liked the how you set that up. People brought, their ancestor photos, but then also the history and of gay, whatever that person was that they felt connected to, and gay culture, and reading those stories, I thought was really great and very interesting, and definitely shed light on the personas around the room and what it is that they were interested in. So that was kind of another way that made it easier for me to connect to people, because I kind of knew what they liked, what they were interested in, and what they respected. And I liked that you did that first after the food, because everyone works better with a full stomach. So yeah, I thought that was nice.
Well, whenever you start an event with men and food, you're on a good start. What was your thought? Because it was kind of really your first retreat, even though you were a host.
Yeah, it was. This conversation is very important because it illustrates the different ways in which people show up, right? And it's a spectrum of it. And this episode is for people, my opinion, this episode is for people that are hesitant about coming into this process with us. This is a chance for us to really talk about what it is. And you said the word anxiety. That's going to be a key word in this discussion with this podcast, and what this work is that we do, and the way in which the majority of people approach it or don't approach it. And it's because of anxieties. And so that barbecue for me, I talked about this before. I'm looking at these mountains differently now. When I come to these events, the old me was anxious. The old me would have had a drink beforehand to curb it, because that's just how I, for decades, got into social situations like this. And it's not who I am now. And it wasn't then. I was late because I had a client hour. That was on my mind. But other than that, when I got here, definitely same thing. I saw bags on the floor. It's like, this is a sleepover. I saw people I recognized. I hugged them. Yeah, there was some anxiety. I was a little bit anxious about meeting the new people, but the name tags were on. That helps me, so I can just go up and talk to people, introduce myself. I think that what we saw is exactly indicative of how we're welcoming people into this. Some people are reserved and drawn back. Other people's are gregarious and right in there. But it's about that. It's about welcoming that spectrum of where you're at and how you approach this. That is entirely what this retreat is about. So what I saw, I don't know. I guess I saw exactly what I would hope to see, is that people coming at this in different places. I've been doing some work in this space. I have changed and grown a lot during this work, and that's who I'm bringing as I come to this. But I recognize that there are people back in the corner. There was the guy that bought, you talked about this months ago, the guy that bought the ticket to the events but never got in. Yeah. Like, those people were here, but very quickly we shifted it. We got to a place of sharing, and I think it's a forge. I think we come together in this circle, and we all start pouring into this forge for each other. And it's an introduction of who we are, and it's a release of anxieties, and it is unbelievably transformative. And it happened that night. I mean, we saw people coming in different ways, but we all got very aligned very quickly.
I think it's important to note, even though we're saying the word anxiety and social anxiety and awkwardness and all of that, I think it's important to say that that's normal.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We don't want to, present to our listening audience that this is something, that you should be afraid of because there was this social awkwardness. That's just normal in any new situation for someone. But what we have to celebrate, and I think you're saying this too, Nick, is that people showed up despite that,
Yep.
nervousness
Yep.
and anxiety. Even if a person may have kind of held back at first, right? They showed up. And again, like you said, it quickly got diffused because of, we had the food. That's a nice diffuser, just some light, social interaction. But then as we got into circle, that really, I think, helped settle, people's minds and expectations of, oh, this is what this is going to be about.
This is, you've said it and I'll never stop saying it, and I'll never stop saying that I'll never stop saying it. It's a place to practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what it is. This event, if you're listening right now and you're hesitant about coming to retreat because you have that social anxiety, bring that with you. I coddle that. I want to help you with that. That's what this is. It's an opportunity to practice a different way of engaging with people. We're so locked into this objectification. I know that he and I are here for a very important reason, as an example in this group and these groups that we're going to continue to do months and months on end. We are people that in our community have been objectified for a long time, and that continual objectification and people thinking they understand what my life is about or his life is about and the way they project it on it. It's a lot of stuff in between having an actual connection with that individual and therefore a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that gets dispelled through this work that we do. So again, no matter where you are on it, by all means, if you're listening to this and you have anxieties about approaching a process like this with other men, that is exactly what these retreats are about. It is important that you bring it. In no way am I saying you are not a part if you have that. You, in fact, I would say the opposite. You are very much qualifying yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you recognize that anxiety, this is exactly the place to work on it.
I'd like to make an observation too,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of fits into what both of you guys were saying. I think it's important to also note that it's not like the Wounded Birds Club. You know what I mean? It's not like everyone that comes to this event is coming here for clinical and medicinal. Not everyone has all these pieces of baggage. Some people do, some people don't. This, at least for me, this was not only a way to heal your potential inner demons as gay men and bi men, and we have a shit ton of baggage from the past, most of us, and it is important to look at that stuff and exercise those demons, get them out of the way so you can move on in life. But the group is also fun.
Celebration.
It's a celebration. It's a way to connect and make friends that you probably wouldn't approach at a bar or out on the street, of all different shades, different people, different ages. And it was really interesting to me. The two people that I kind of connected with the most, and I won't use names, but was the younger one and the oldest one. The older one was just funny, and I say older, you're close to my age, not that old if you're listening. He was just funny and self-deprecating and super fucking nervous from the second he walked in. And so he felt the need to try and get people to laugh and giggle and, and be campy. And at first it kind of it was distracting and, because he couldn't help but talk because it was a nervous setting. It was tough topic. So he kept trying to be the person that diffuses, which I've seen so much in our culture. People are there with their humor, because otherwise it's so dark. So after a while of getting a little bit irritated when he was interrupting and stuff like that, I really came to see, what he is all about. And his heart was just really big and really in the right place.
And the gift that his contribution
Yeah, he just wanted to feel part of the group.
Yes. Yeah.
And his way of contributing to that was by making everyone giggle and laugh. And by, midway through, I just really came to see him as this nice guy, really nice guy. And then on the other end of the spectrum was that younger kid who was, I couldn't figure out whether, what his or her pronouns were based on the dress and the way he was carrying, or they were carrying themselves. And it was just but I noticed the great artistic vibe when we created the little dolls and how beautiful he'd done that. And, I talked briefly on and off with them, and it was just like such a nice thing to see this young kid who, in my age, would never be able to dress like that or walk around like that. I mean, in my family, a big Italian family, it would have been like, what the fuck are you, smack in the back of the head. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And just to see this kid unchained and just wanting to figure out where he is and what's going on and feeling comfortable enough to be there in a big group and say some of the things that he was feeling. It was just nice to see that.
Let me say, I'm sorry. It's an honor to witness that because it's educational. It's something that you needed. It's an education you needed specifically for what you just said. Your programming, your experience in the past and your family, get the fuck out of here with that. That we needed to change that. You needed an example put before you, and it was educational. And it's an honor to witness that process. I had a lot of lessons brought to me that I didn't know that I was going to get. That's what this is. You through sharing our stories with each other and being open, we are teaching each other things that we needed in order to to better connect with people authentically. And so I think it was an honor to witness those two people in particular, but everyone. It was an honor to witness the process because it's an educational and it's from a selfish perspective, it makes me better. I always tell my nutrition clients to never hold back with questions. I want them as many times. I don't care how stupid or mundane they think they are, because at the very least, it makes me better for the next person. And I think that this, we are facilitators of this retreat in training. We're always going to keep learning every time we do them because there's so much information and knowledge that these people bring by attending and sharing with us.
Oh my God, how about the guy what a nice guy. He was like a fucking deer in the headlight the whole time. He was this huge smile. He was like, it was like he was getting all this stuff that he needed. And at one point I went over to him and I put my arm, I said, I'm so glad that you are here. I can just see that this is feeding you and helping you move past this. He, as all these kids, he was straight, came out super late in life, and just all this shit and all these dynamics are going on, and I couldn't help but think this poor fucking guy was going through all this shit pretty much alone. And when he came here, he was able to talk about, reluctantly, and it was tough. It was like pulling teeth, and I understand how emotional it is for him, but for how he expressed himself and how it was like so great for him to have these people around that were listening to him and giving him feedback. And you could tell that he was like this when he first came in, and then he's like, it was just so nice. And I told him, I said, I'm so glad you're here. This get together is so important, especially for people like you that have gone through this and are going through this.
Well, I want to put something in context here because I'm listening, and first I was smiling because the enthusiasm coming out of the two of you was interesting.
You did this.
Considering I'm exhausted.
And it's interesting the conversations I've had with people after the retreat who kind of wish they had been here, because some of the commentary that we've heard was, oh, I don't know if I could ever do that. I don't know if I could hang out with those guys for that many days. Or it's just going to be a big sex party. Or like it was just interesting. And every time I heard something like that, I thought that's exactly why you needed to be here.
Yeah.
It's those projections that have kind of we can advocate to society our need for rights, but until we give ourselves permission, the right to exist, who are we to expect it out of the Republicans? but keep advocating for it.
And who are we to prejudge?
But
Given who we are.
Yeah, but I think the revolution has to start within,
Yep.
and that is that we show up and we dare to do something different,
Yeah.
and that's what I
We
saw out of the
practice.
participants,
Yes.
because I knew all of them in some capacity, and I thought all 16 men, including myself and Bruce and you guys, right? Like we all dared to show up and practice and try something different. And left, the energy, we have this little text thread now. And once that got established, it was like opening a floodgate of things to say, which we've remedied.
You moved over. What is the app that you moved over?
No, GroupMe. Yeah, we have
Group-
a
yeah.
Mindfully Gay chat for GroupMe now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to understand that context. And I think the anxiety was, I know for me, the anxiety was, okay, we've got all the ingredients of this recipe together. Can we really make a cake?
Mm-hmm.
I think the other anxiety was we had changed our format because we've been using this ranch that had bedding and rooms, and but it raised the price considerably. So we were able to bring the price down and do basically a camp out here in my house,
Yeah.
which I have a big spacious house and a nice backyard that allows for a lot of privacy. And I think we all kind of agreed this was the better place to do it.
Yeah.
But when I say people dared to come and do things differently, the instructions were bring your sleeping bags, bring a mattress, bring something to make yourself comfortable. And it worked.
But we started off with, rules of conduct that were important. And we felt like we had to raise it and talk about it because, we are very sexual creatures in general. Everyone, that's whether you like it or not, the focus of historically is for us have been focused on sex. And,
right.
it's all about when men get together at the bar, it's all about meeting, hooking up. When you're on the apps, it's about meeting and hooking up and fucking. It's all, that's always the focal point. And we wanted to put a pin in that because whereas that's clearly wonderful and I love it, he loves it, it is part of who we are as sexual beings and men, but it's not the most fucking important part. The most important part is first making a connection.
Right. So
you tell them
yeah.
what you...
So what Cole's talking about is we start the whole process. We sit down in our circle and we get to know each other. So for instance, if this were our circle, I interview John interviews me, and then we kind of present each other to the group. And then we just have some conversations about agreements. What are agreements that we can make in order to create the container to do the kind of work and process that we want? And so part of that container was an agreement to confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that agreement was to disengage from our phones, and then the other agreement was a conversation and a process talking about sexuality and boundaries in the context of the retreat, and an invitation. The invitation was, let's take sexuality just off the table. It doesn't mean we can't talk about it.
Where do we put sexuality and what do we call him?
Oh, that's right. The elf on the shelf. So we look at it.
That's what we called our little sex monster was the elf on the shelf. And for this particular retreat, we said, let's put him on the shelf, and we see him and how wonderful and hot and nice and awesome and a big part of our lives he is. But right now, we'll let him sit on the shelf.
Right.
You know, sometimes he wanders around, but we want to keep him on the shelf for now.
And I think it's important, and it might even be worth to have a process or conversation about it, because our intent as a group organizers was an invitation to say, let's just not get into sexualized energy, even though that's a sacred part of who we are. It's a beautiful part. It's a fun part. It's an explorative part of our lives. Let's focus on the emotional, the spiritual, the mindfulness. And that means we can talk about it.
Yeah.
We can have process around it, but let's not get into the flirting or the touching or going off in a corner somewhere.
Because it distracts from.
Yeah. And so that was an invitation. We had a great conversation about it because that was an item on everyone's mind.
Yeah.
Wondering about how does that play into this.
And let me, I'm sorry, just maybe to say that is absolutely an item on people's minds that are listening right now that haven't come here. And
Yeah.
I know this because I just, right after this retreat, I started with a new client. They're a gay couple, and we were talking. They're aware of this retreat, and their very first thing was they didn't want to come into it because they thought it was going to be a sex thing. It's not about having sex. It is not about that. People do not get naked. We are not having sex at these events. Yes, the elf is on the shelf, and we're going to have locker room talk, as Melania gave us years ago in that interview. Thank you, Melania. But yeah, of course, we're going to talk about, we're dudes. We're going to have banter and talk about sex. But absolutely, the anxiety that people have around that, that act, it's not, we can talk, we should, and we do, we will talk about that anxiety, but we will not, it's not about facilitating people having sex and hooking up. It is not that. So I hope that people listening that might be apprehensive about signing up for retreats specifically for that reason, and I know that it's a common one, I hope you would just give this a chance and let this be a relief. Let this conversation be a relief in a respect of, it isn't about that. That's what, there's an app for that. We have many apps for that. That's exactly the loop that the majority of us are caught up in, is just this, I don't really know this person, but I'm so fucking horny, I'm going to have anonymous sex, and then it's done and it's over and it's empty.
Not that there's anything wrong with that,
No,
and not that the sex
I'm not
isn't.
shaming sex.
Yeah, I know
I'm just
that.
saying, I want to be extremely clear that this, and the reason why I'm filled with fire, I can feel it. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know why those songs come back to me in the lodge. I don't know why I feel so strongly about this. But it is, I know what it is. It's my commitment to my brothers that are hurting, that I'm going to help hold this container in the way that it needs to be so that we can come together and heal. Was there temptation for me at this retreat? Absolutely. Did I want to act on that? Yeah, because I'm programmed to. I know exactly how to play that game, and I do it well. But I didn't, okay? It was literally right in front of me during yoga. Like, there was a lot of temptation for me, but I didn't act on it. And I'm glad that I did, because it was a lesson. It was something that I needed to learn so that I'm better next time around. This is not about shaming people for sex.
No.
At all.
No.
We are all absolutely hugely supportive of it, but it's an opportunity to put that on pause and to practice something different so that we can have tangible, real connections with our brothers, because when we do, we are filled with this spirituality that you just don't have before you jump in.
In a nutshell, there's a time and a place.
Right. But let's talk about this for a minute, because I know you and I had a conversation after the retreat about this topic, and we had one before the retreat, and it was interesting what happened in the retreat, because I think there were people who were across a particular kind of spectrum of exposure to sexuality and access to sexuality and sexual expression. And so there were a couple of folks in there who were just like, yeah, right on, we want to support that. And then there was one or two people who had a reaction of, I've spent my whole life disengaged sexually, and I'm not even sure how to describe the reaction to it, but I think that's the power of the circle, is there were people who had responses to that invitation, which were sources of necessary exorcism, if you will, right? Like I need to look at what my relationship is with sexuality versus the person who's feeling like their sexuality may be coming to a close in their life. Mm-hmm. They're having a very different reaction, feeling like, right. And so I felt like, I'm not even sure if I'm expressing myself very well, other than the idea of the retreat isn't to kind of just like put any nails in a coffin as much as to say, what happens when these issues come up?
Yes.
Where are we at in relationship to them? And can I understand you and can you understand
Yes,
me?
right.
And can we recognize that we're all faces of the same community?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Because I
You're,
think
you're having that thought.
Well, I'm trying to follow. I'm trying to follow where you're going with that. You're kind of trying to say that it's just what this particular get together. We made it a point to say it's not about the sex. It's about all of the other things. It's about healing. It's about expressing. It's about making friendships and all that. I'm guessing that that's kind of what you're saying.
And recognizing that everyone's response was relevant.
Yep.
and,
Yes.
and varied. Some people
Yes,
were
and
there
good,
to
yes.
get laid.
Yes.
Some people
Yes.
came and they
Very
were like,
important.
"Oh," and
Right.
you kept hearing them
Yeah.
talk about it. So it's really tough sometimes to put that big giant part of who we are as sexually active men,
Yeah.
to put that on the shelf. But it is necessary sometimes to do that, to do the work to get yourself in a better place.
Yeah.
And I was kidding around with you, and like right after the retreat or maybe before, I was like, you know what? We have hosted many fun, lighthearted, sexually charged parties, and I was like, well, maybe we can one day get the group together. We'll all go to the strip clubs in Montreal, and we'll just diffuse and have fun and make it a positive energy that way. But there are events and get-togethers that usually the sex just gloms on it and
Yeah.
takes over. So I think it was really important for you to bring that all up and for us to
Yeah.
air it out and show it for what it is and say, okay, the alpha's going up here for now, but he can come down and play sometimes too. It's not like it's all about, like I said, the Wounded Bird Club,
Yeah.
It's not all about that. There will be other events that are more freeing and fun in that way, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. I like what you said, Cole, because there were some folks that may have arrived, expecting sex. And then on the other end of that spectrum, too, there's people who are just like freaked out. It's like, oh my God, is this going to be about sex?
Yeah.
And so I think by setting that tone and laying it out there, here's our agreements. I think that helped diffuse, at least that was the sense that I got, helped diffuse
Absolutely.
some of those I want to say bipolar.
But the ranges of the spectrum where people are showing up.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that it allowed, because I was witness to it during the retreat, because we had not just left this elephant, just left standing in the room, we addressed it, we talked about it, gave it a name, and we could still see it as that elf on the shelf. People seemed comfortable, it seemed, to then talk about it.
Yes.
There was guys that were talking about maybe some of their, sexual hookups or relationships, and the other guys listened and gave feedback, and there was an interaction and conversation, and that seemed to me very just welcoming. Like,
yes,
this is what we want.
That's the energy of what we're
That's
promoting.
the energy. Mm-hmm.
It's we're coming to this with a lot of experience in our gaiety. We have been to different places, we have hosted and helped and whatever, but there were certainly individuals showing up to that retreat that had no experience.
Mm-hmm.
This was their first opportunity to dip their toe in the water and see what it's like to be in a group of gay men, especially, coming from a place where married, children, recent, just barely coming out type of thing.
Right.
And so absolutely, it is so important. I know I'm trying to say, no, we're not fucking here, but it's not that I'm shaming the idea of it. It is still a very welcoming place, regardless of where you are in that spectrum of experience with that topic. Yeah, it's still going to be a discussion about it. We're going to explore those issues, like you said, and we're going to share that. And so that sharing of that is quite satisfying, I'd say, to the people that are dipping their toes in for the first time and we're thinking it's a big, pile on sex of something type of event. It's not, but you're going to understand sexual experience through discussion and through the way in which we contribute it in the conversations we have.
I do have to make a confession, though. I did get naked during the retreat.
You liar.
I did. I took a shower
Oh.
every morning. But the door was closed.
You didn't leave your garments on when you took a shower, Jerry? Come on.
I want to shift a little bit because I think I'm thinking of two things. Because Saturday was this big kind of feast of opportunities and exercise that we did.
Yeah.
Everything from yoga, which it was interesting. We did it in the basement, and I was kind of taking pictures. So I wasn't participating, but I was watching people. It was like their bodies had shifted during the night, from the first night through the yoga thing. There was an invitation to do some mindfulness exercise. There was some great discussion. I was telling Cole the other day, you need to be a teacher. You need to teach some classes.
I'm ready.
Because you did some great nutritional
Yeah, that was
education
Thank you.
that people were just like captivated by.
Yes, that was so cool.
The whole discussion about what you had for breakfast was, although it was anonymous, it was clear we had some bodybuilders in the room and they eat small animals for breakfast, I guess. But it was interesting. People were like really kind of transfixed with that. And
People are thirsty for that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Knowledge,
Yeah.
information.
They want to know. I mean, especially, he knows everything and how to make the male body work properly from
Yeah.
top to bottom.
about
So when he went, even that, he said, we got to talk about mushrooms. I'm like, who the fuck? What mushrooms?
Mushrooms of all things. Why
Then when
mushrooms?
edible mushrooms.
regular mushrooms, not
Culinary
psychedelic.
mushrooms.
Yeah. But so he set it all up, and there's a big thing of mushrooms, and the mushrooms. He's talking about the mushrooms, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why do I care about mushrooms? And then when he got into all the details about
Even how to cut them.
Yeah, but also the what the mushroom does to the human body and why it's so important in certain amounts. People have just lost that reality that
Yeah.
we grew up, as human beings with mushrooms around for a reason. The nutritional values and the minerals in the mushrooms are things that we lack and don't have if we don't eat the mushrooms.
Yeah.
And he
And-
went into the whole history and everything about it, and I thought it was fascinating.
Well, and I was watching people watch it, and I thought doing it in your thong was a creative way of doing it,
That's
but they were transfixed. He didn't do that. but people, I actually took a video of it. I just started over at the counter and just kind of went around, and people were clearly attached to that.
Yeah.
And then we got into this space of doing some deeper ritualistic kinds of work. And the night before, we had set up that ancestor altar, and we had invited our queer ancestors to be there. And everyone is so interesting because we've done this retreat before, but out of 16 guys, there were no replications.
Yeah.
People did their homework, and we had trans activists, we had gay activists, we had artists. It was just really interesting. The invitation to invite our queer ancestors on top of our personal ancestors.
Gay Viking warriors.
Yes.
Yeah, audience.
It was an interesting.
I'm sorry, let me just say one thing. I'm sorry. But I have to speak to the yoga component because, I appreciate everything you said about the nutrition stuff, and I'm glad because I do. It is in me to teach, and I'm glad that this part of me is coming out because, again, before apprehension, scared crowds, whatever. Now I welcome it. I'm really comfortable in that space, and I love talking with people about these things. But you've talked about it before, John. One of the joys that coaching yoga brings you is that I just did that moment when people do that. And that's exactly what I was seeing. That too for me is why I love coaching movement and getting into process with people and getting them into things that they thought they could never do before. But that's exactly what I overheard happening with people. Cause that was a challenging routine. It was perfectly perfect. There were different levels of ability in the room, but there were just a number of conversations about, I just did that. I just did that. So again, think about what we're doing. We're offering them this opportunity, this container of, pouring out some anxiety, sharing, getting to know people like tangibly in a very short amount of time. The anxieties get kicked out. We have physical challenges that you get to pull through and show up for yourself, and you realize, wow, I did that. Like it just keeps adding layers of this transformation that people get to experience when they're here in 2 days, in a 2-day period,
Yeah.
essentially.
Felt like 2 weeks.
Sorry I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Well, the thrust of everything that we saw is I started to recognize like people physically and energetically were shifting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this is something that Jerry does very well. And with that particular individual, was able to see his authenticity and to name it and to celebrate it and to look him in his eye and say, this is your blessing.
It's a gift.
This is your gift.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what I'm getting chills now.
No, I
That
just did
was
too.
that was the thing.
It's interesting on social media. I do a lot of reels for Mindfully Gay, and we average maybe about 100, 120. They say you got hit 120 times. The reel that was a collection of pictures about the retreat has exceeded 500 or 600.
Oh, really?
Then I did a reel the next day where I was driving home from the gym and I was just like still kind of like ignited from the retreat. And so I just kind of videotaped myself with the phone properly positioned so that I could drive.
It was great lighting. It was great lighting. Yeah.
Was the phone vertical or horizontal? That matters.
But that also got over 500 hits,
Nice.
which I thought, well, that's interesting because it makes me wonder that I think a lot of people knew about this retreat, were curious about it, but didn't pursue it.
Yeah, they needed to see results.
Yeah.
They needed to see.
I noticed another kind of an important element that everyone seems to now be like walking on eggshells around, and I could just feel. I know I need it, but I could also feel it with a few other guys in the room about masculinity not being a toxic thing, not being a negative thing. One guy was there and he was focused on the bear story and the bear song the Vikings. And, I felt his vibe of, how do I put this? Like a lot of the campy stuff that was flying around was not really relatable to him.
Sure.
And I get it all. I'm old enough to appreciate and know what camp is all about and stuff. But I feel like the masculinity vibe and the affirmations about masculinity have really kind of been lost because that's been mixed with the heteronormative oppression shit. But the reality is that a lot of gay men that are out there can't relate to having to be in the female vibe. And I really think it's shitty not to let them have a voice and that be part of it. And I think a lot of men out there now crave that. They don't crave the I need to be feminine to be with the man.
Yeah. A lot of us don't fit the extreme of drag queens and that whole persona. And a lot of us don't fit the persona of leatherness, if you will.
Don't you love that spectrum? So you have that one, you used the analogy of a drag queen, and then you have the other end of the spectrum. I mean, all of this is valuable and wonderful. But, there are certain segments that have been pigeonholed into negativity.
Sure.
And I think the fact that if I feel like, and I can't help who I am as a masculine man, why should that be a negative thing for me? Why can't we talk about that without being,
Yeah. So I want to ask, and this could take a few minutes, but I want to ask this question. When you were here last time, I kind of asked this question because I listened to our podcast. But I asked this question about how would you like to leave? And how would you like to be able to leave the retreat? Like, what would you hope would happen? And maybe you remember your answers or not. I have notes. No, but I would love for us to kind of reflect on what was our takeaways? Like we, we're facilitating, but part of, I think, the magic of this isn't about a guru. This isn't about a leader. We're facilitating, but we facilitate through our own transparency. It's not therapy. We're doing
sharing.
society, social kind of engagement around our work. And I've got just as much work to do as anyone else. And so, yeah, I'm curious how you would reflect post-retreat. Like, what did you take from it that has shifted?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I do know. I hate that saying. Well, I don't know.
I took notes.
Well, when I first came to the very first Sweat Lodge, the first retreat, I was very hesitant. I thought, we were just talking about earlier, this is a fucking cult or some stupid religious thing, or it's an excuse to fuck everyone. I thought all
Lord
that
of the
stuff.
Flies. What is it? Isn't it?
Yeah, and
TV
you went over a few times. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the fuck's
You were
going
worried.
on?
You were skeptical.
Well, I'm a normal guy. I mean, I love you, and I was jealous, and then I was concerned. Is this a cult or some shit? So I was a little, and then when I came over, I met them, and I thought these are nice, normal guys, but, I'm still a little skeptical. And then when I went into the Sweat Lodge, and I was there, and I was still uncomfortable and reserved, and when it was pitch black, and then the drums and the singing, I thought, wow, this is really a very cool, out of my realm of things I've ever experienced before. I kept thinking to myself, as a producer and a photographer and a filmmaker, I kept thinking, oh my God, I would love to record this and just put it on a headset and lay there in bed and just chill out to it. So that kind of was nice, but I was still a little skeptical. But then I got to know you, and the four of us went out to dinner a couple of times, and I saw that you were like really nice, down-to-earth, cool guys, and I'm like, oh great, we'll make friends. So the more I was picking your brain about it and picking Bruce's brain, and he's got so much knowledge and such great stories. I loved, in everything that I said, he was, both of you do this, introspectively, contemplatively considerate. And you do that thing that, I love. It's, a lot of people are freaked out by it, but I call it the pregnant pause, when you're like, well, and I go, Jerry, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, you see, and then like you smell the wood burning, you see the smoke coming out of his ears, and he's like processing this because he gives a shit. They both do, and they want to get it right because they care that I'm sitting here and I'm interested. And so those long pregnant pauses, I always knew were going to give birth to something really special.
Yes.
And it never failed. So I was like in. And when you're planning this latest one, I was really I'm in it because I was looking for something to help me get past this grief. And a lot of people don't know this, but I was born 1 million years ago, so I experienced the gay plague that ravaged everyone in the 80s. And I always tell this story about, I have this 8x10 black and white photo of me standing with like 15 of my good friends and my ex-lover, and and that photo, only 2 of us are alive. So during that time I was and this is in itself, it's miraculous because I can talk about it without fucking crying, because I couldn't even get it out for so many years. I just went to, for this short period of 3 or 4 years in the 80s, I went through, 25 funerals of everyone that was older than me. I lost all my gay elders, anyone I looked up to, except for one. And I started, to internalize, why am I doing that? And I never could figure out it was because I just didn't process that grief. All of my friends that I love so much, I just didn't know what to do. I had no training at all. No one taught me that, and I couldn't talk to my parents, my family about that because I was still kind of in the closet during that time, or the internal strife of talking to my older brother or my mother or my father or something just wasn't going to happen. I had no one else, and like I said, everyone else died, so it was just stuck in me. When I'm talking to you, and we went away to the Grand Canyon, just the four of us, it was a nice couples getaway, and we smoked the pipe at the edge of the canyon, and you guys were teaching me and explaining to me how, because I shared that, what I just shared with these people here, you explained to me how you can pray and talk to the people that have passed and process this grief. And it was just, and I kept asking the most minute, like, questions, and I was breaking it down. I'm like, well, spiritually, like, what specifically do you say, and how can you pray out loud? You have to pray out loud. Can you pray inside? And, I mean, I didn't know. Could you pray? You're saying I could pray to all of my past ancestors, and you were like, and I kept like, I was waiting for you guys to go, but you were so patient, and you really, especially with Bruce, these little parables and stuff that it helped me. It made me say, okay, these guys seem to know, have a way to process grief and the afterlife, and to celebrate and to recognize and look at your past and see what the fuck is going on in a way that might help me get, as I describe it, unstuck. Because I've been stuck in that weird place where I had so much grief. I couldn't help myself. So I went into this strange thing, which our friend Dave calls the Mother Teresa complex. And so during all of these years, I've been just trying to help other people to recognize that after I've helped them, that they are in a better place. And I kept trying, I'm really just trying to be nice to people and help people. And, if I see someone on the street struggling with something, I was like going overboard with that. And I couldn't figure out why. And it was because I was craving someone to do that for me. So when I went into the lodge, I'm getting choked up a little bit, which it's good and bad, I guess, because it shows that it's still strong with me. But I'm actually able to verbalize it, which no way was I able to talk about any of this shit. Like, leave me alone,
I could pinch you.
Yeah. So I said, I'm going to be open. I'm going to be open, and I'm going to do what these guys have suggested that I do. And when I went into that sweat lodge, and I started to think about things that I hadn't thought about ever, and I started to put into practice prayer in my own way. And when people were sharing, it was good for me to listen and not observe, because it's pitch black in there and it's hot as fuck, and you're really there alone. It's like being in outer space, or in a pregnant stomach. It was like being in that, like a crucible. And I felt that I could cry, which I never do, but I felt like I could release, and I felt like no one could see it, but everyone was there to be part of it, to spiritually kind of help me too. And I was able to, when I'm sitting there in the dark, and I at one point I remember feeling me putting my hands up, and I was so open to this that I had described it to you. I felt like it was like I had a river in me that was dammed up completely, the dam. And then at some point in there, when I started to verbalize a prayer to, my mother or my nephew or my sister or my best friend or all these people that have passed, for the first time ever in my life, I asked for like a group for help from them. And I really did. I felt like, it almost felt like there was like a latch unlocking, and the dam just opened, and I was able to get all of these fucking impacted emotions out. So for me, that was it for me. That was like, I am now in a place, it's still a little bit of a struggle. I do get a little aggravated or frustrated, but it's nothing like it used to be. I feel like now I can talk about it. I couldn't even talk about it before. And now I can. And it's for that alone, that retreat was just solid gold.
Wow. Cool. Wow.
Okay, that's all I have to say about that.
It's such a bargain rate.
Exactly right.
But I think it's important to understand that that is a wealth of knowledge that you bring. But I also watched you show up in lots of ways that had nothing to do with your sex.
Yeah.
You were the person greeting people at the door. You were the first face that people saw. You were incredibly inviting. I just watched you put each person at ease. And then when you were in the circle, let's face it, you guys carry a certain layer of celebrityship. And both of you showed up and put yourselves out there in a way that they haven't seen you guys before.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, I think you and I have discussed some really, I think we're thinking on the same line about how to be creative around the sexuality piece.
Yeah.
And I think that's a valuable piece that you bring. But I just think it's important to understand that at this thing, how you showed up, how you participated was also part of your magic.
Absolutely.
And your purpose.
And was critical. And no, it was critical.
Yeah. And
that was touching for me because there was a part of me that was playing a little Papa Bear, almost feeling like I want to kind of protect something here. And it just naturally flowed because you guys were naturally there, and everyone else naturally showed up. That's what happened, was this layer of authenticity that was incredibly powerful. And and it kind of started and ended with us. Like, we all had to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
John, what about your experience?
Just thinking about what Cole shared so deeply and personally here, and I appreciate that. And what I think what it speaks to is maybe what I was expecting, or at least hoping for, was people to, step down from that. Well, I don't know if that's the right expression, but, show up as they were, whether it was awkward or scared or nervous, whatever that was, that they were able to step into the spirituality of this space and tap into their magic. And I certainly can walk away feeling like, check, that got done. That happened for me personally, and to witness our attendees have a similar experience and have Cole here to share deeply his transition and work that happened, what led up to Lodge, this retreat, and after the fact, and where you want to go now. And I said this at the closing circle, and again, this speaks to Jerry and what he offers, and you're speaking to this too, where so thoughtful and contemplative, and because we had originally thought of doing this retreat at another location out of town, it was going to cost more, and making the decision to do it at home, in Jerry's home, in Jerry and Bruce's home, where they already have established and created this space of community, of spirituality. It just, you just step right into
energy.
it.
It's here.
It's here.
Yeah.
And whether these guys knew that or not, that's what they were
Yeah.
stepping into. And I think that's what allowed them to just be. And we only had one full day together, and kind of a couple of hours on a Friday and a couple hours on a Sunday. That was it. But all that had happened in that amount of time was tremendous. I said, because I know this space and I know Jerry and Bruce's home, this is home to me.
Totally.
And I really felt at home
Yeah.
here. And so that's what helped diffuse my nervousness. Like, I'm at home. And I'm hoping these other guys also experience the home feeling of this space and what we're creating in this retreat.
Do you know what it kind of reminded me of as you're going through this and I'm remembering all, I just couldn't help but think this kind of, it's totally opposite, but it's sort of like, I think what we should go to, but in a different way. But when I was a kid, summer camp. Summer camp.
Yes.
We had counselors that there was like, what was that thing? GIMP class. Everyone attended GIMP class. Everyone did like, okay, we're going down to the lake. Everyone's going to learn how to swim today. And then you have classes on, everyone's going to learn relay races. And it was like singing around the campfire. And it was this, that just dawned on me. I'm getting goosebumps thinking I loved summer camp when I was a little kid. And I kind of feel like it had that little bit of a vibe. I'd like to, maybe we should create like Camp Mary Yuhu or the tribe of the Viking camp. And,
Do you remember years ago, we used to do a fairy scout camp. Not a Boy Scout camp, fairy scout camp. And we would go camp out on this property. And we'd have 15, 20 guys there.
Yeah.
And everything from a sweat lodge to stupid tie-dye tents. And I think we did tie-dye one time.
Yeah, we did.
I remember doing tie-dye camp. I remember that. So I mean, now my mind's going to be racing with that because whereas I really feel like there should be graduate levels to this thing. I think once you go to the first thing, you graduate because now you understand what the retreat is about. Then you graduate to group talk so you can talk about what it is that you want from this. And then the thing that happened to me in the lodge where you get to move all of this shit out of your brain so you can get on and be a happy human being again. So you have merit badges for each one of them. Then when you graduate and you're the eagle bottom or the eagle top, you can then join all the fun reindeer games because all your stuff is unblocked and you're having and you want to have fun. So maybe you should consider we should make little merit badges for graduate. I don't know. Just all this stuff is coming out of me now.
Yeah. All right, Nick.
I will say this: it's a micro and a macro for me. On a macro level, we sat in this room when we did a pipe ceremony, and I told you I could not see myself because the porn thing has been the trajectory for so long, and I'm having trouble finding myself in it. I still kind of do. I have for a long time, and it's hard for me to look forward and see that as my path. And so, at a micro level, like I can't explain it. I am fired up. I am extremely energized, and with the understanding of what my purpose is. And I have prayed. The second lodge I did, I started praying for purpose. I asked for my purpose to become more clear, and it relates back to work experience where I ran a very high-end restaurant that was intimidating to people. And one of my many purposes there was to bring, and I always recognized it. It wasn't the people that had billions of dollars that came in every other day and ate the food and didn't know what the fuck it was. It was the people that saved up for years to come in for special occasion that lived in the poor neighborhoods. And I knew where they were coming from. And they were very intimidated by the space and the menu and the language. And it was that I already connected to it then, that bringing those people in and making them feel welcome and making them feel like a VIP. And so that for me, that's my purpose now. I know that that's who I need to be in this process. And yes, I have knowledge through nutrition and through fitness, and I know how it can transform people and bring their confidence. And that's who I need to be in a macro level and have a much clearer purpose now. And it is a great relief to me because I was concerned there for a little while. At a micro level, I was entirely concerned about you and your comfort. We did that lodge the first time. The whole time I was distracted because I was worried about you being comfortable. And, you know, we were at vacation in Grand Canyon and those fucking coyotes start hollering. I wake up at 2 a.m. and I'm worried about Dog, my biscuit. I'm worried about you being comfortable. I can't sleep. It's just kind of how I'm wired, I guess. And so at a micro level, you know, I saw it early on. Like, again, we fast tracked a lot of transformation because everyone showed up authentically. When I saw you be that, I knew like that. I just knew that this was right. I knew that you were going to be okay. And because of that, then I could relax and I could, you know, I wasn't concerned about you being comfortable in this space anymore, because you started, as you should, as I'm asking everyone to do, you start taking ownership of it and contributing to it and caring about it. And that's exactly the energy that makes it so great. And I do have to say too, that's exactly what this house is just, it's so comfortable. It's so welcoming. It's so, every time I come in here, I'm not afraid of anything. I don't know how to explain it. It's just, it is the house that when I kept thinking about going down south, I kept really thinking, really, Jerry, you're going to take a group of homos down where the Manti Temple is opening? Like, it kept not making sense in my mind. And I think in some ways that's kind of why I kept stepping back from them when they were happening, because I just didn't feel safe going there, because it's rurality, it's religious. And to me, that's what I needed to get away from, because that's what was so harmful for me. And, I'm just so glad that it did happen here, because none of that was here. It was just utterly joyous and family building. And I left that day to go, John, but I left that day. Yeah, we were hungry as hell. We fucking pigged out afterwards, but I was so full of energy. I haven't been that productive, and I haven't been that productive in a day like that. And it was even a half day. I was like a fucking T-2000, like from Terminator. I was just running around, just doing everything. People were walking by, I stopped and talking to them. Like, it just was a very, very transformative experience. And John, I am so looking forward to the next ones that we can bring Donna to the altar, because she has to be a part of these with us. Her energy has to be here with this. And
that's
so
our best friend.
I'm so deeply looking forward to the next one.
Yes.
Whereas before I was scared of Lodge, and I still kind of am a little bit, but I understand it's a respect, and it is bringing me to a place of where I need to do work. And Bruce taught me that with that song and with that story that he said as I was laying there trying to catch my breath. Like, it's deeply profound, and I'm so jazzed. I'm so energized.
I think one thing I've learned in all the traditions that I've been a part of, we are a culture that tries to marginalize the emotional experience and to be in control of it. And what I've learned, and it's not always easy. Like, I don't necessarily like to get choked up and emotional in front of people, but if it happens, it happens. Like, that's authentic. That's real. And I think what I've learned through these traditions is that the joyous, celebratory moments of profound happiness are just as relevant as moments of profound sadness and grief and loss. And I often find myself talking to clients who are like, I want to fix this emotional state. And I often will say, what happens when you lean into it?
Go into
What will it teach you? Where will it take you? What will it liberate you from? And I think, you know, I've talked a little bit about, you know, my health transformation in working with Nick. I didn't even realize parts of my psyche that had been shut down until I started to lean into, why have you done things in a particular way? And so I want to kind of normalize that process, right? Like what you talked about was incredibly profound, and it pertains to this grief that you were carrying, but it's going to pertain to sensuality. It's going to pertain to future losses. It's going to pertain to future celebrations. That somehow these medicine ways invite us to fully have lived experiences. And that's what I saw happening with the guys. And I know for me personally, when I left the retreat, I became very conscious of layers of, I was very full, like, and I mentioned to you guys, I was like ravenous, like, I was just like randomly eating shit. I'm like, I haven't done this in 2 years. What am I doing? And sometimes spirit work, I tell people sometimes spirit work will do that to you, where you're just like, when you're done, like, I gotta feast, right? I gotta feel, energize the body from the experience. But I left the experience just also deeply contemplative, with pieces of work that I still need to do and want to do, and leaning into the fear. Yeah, so the retreat was remarkable.
Yes.
And we want to do more. And as you can hear, our ideas are churning, and we probably need to sit down and spend a couple of hours, maybe before I head off to Mongolia, to strategize about how to move it forward. We do this in the context of our lives.
Right.
I work full time. You work we all work full time, and but it is possible. And what I've noticed after the retreat, like, we now have a hiking coordinator, and we have I'm hoping our friend that we talked about earlier will come to future retreats and help us with the greeting and the getting people comfortable. And we've talked about mentorships. And when we started this, I kept using the concept of a movement. We're creating a movement. We have the potential of shifting a cultural narrative that is really going to be inclusive, and not just about the people who have the starlight in the moment, but that we can start to normalize and find balance in these gay identities. And I think we just got a huge sampling of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Wait, I just have to say, it's more than a movement; it's a revolution. That's exactly what it is.
Wait, you were the one that yelled at me about a movement.
I just had to correct that. But yeah.
All right. So we want to thank everyone for joining us. We hope to see you at our future events, whether that's yoga or hiking or nutrition in the park or fitness in the park, whatever we're doing. Or maybe you have an idea. Please contact us. Send us an email.
Yeah.
We have folks who are wanting to do like a quilting circle, and we've had other suggestions put out that we know there's talent out there. Come and join this process and create an expansive circle.
Share your gifts. Yeah.
I want to learn Viking rowing. I want to learn some rah-rah
Useful.
stuff too. Quilting is nice. Sewing is nice.
I'm
but,
in for quilting. I'm definitely in.
I
want to include everyone.
We're going to take you to the gym. You can do a hoorah or something.
Okay,
there.
good.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussion on the Mindfully Gay retreat.
We're so grateful for your support and for joining us on this journey. And a big thank you to Cole for joining us this week.
If this episode resonated with you, we invite you to join us for our Fall 2024 retreat, happening from September 20th to 22nd in the beautiful state of Utah.
For more information and to register, visit mindfullygay.com. We'd love to see you there and share this incredible experience with you.
Until next time, stay mindful and stay true to yourself.